Hello dear students, today we are discussing the descriptive paper for company law in CA Inter that came for your September 24 examination. Let's start off. First question, A part, we have a company SAB Health Products Limited. Now this company has issued 5 lakh equity shares. The nominal value is 100 rupees each. These are fully subscribed. They are partly paid for 50 rupees each. Now this company is asking for 30 rupees on each of the shares from all the shareholders. Now one shareholder, Mr. GH, he is holding 10,000 shares. He has paid all the money which is due on the shares in advance. So that means he was supposed to pay 50 plus 30, 80 rupees per share, but he has paid the entire 100 rupees. Now he is claiming interest on the money given in advance and he wants more dividend because he is paid calls in advance. Is it possible? So if the company's articles allow, then interest can be paid on calls in advance. But what about the dividend? See, dividend cannot be paid on calls in advance. Dividend has to be on the paid up value, not on calls in advance. Moving on, there is one more shareholder, Mr. LK. He is holding 15,000 shares and he has not paid the first call. Now directors are asking him to pay the entire amount. That means the entire 100 rupees have to be paid by him. The directors want him to pay that. Can the company do so? Okay, so here the relevant section is section number 49, which talks about uniform calls from all the shareholders. So the company should ask for uniform calls from all the shareholders. The company cannot differentiate between shareholders, asking someone to pay certain money, the other person to pay different amount on the calls. Okay, so here the directors cannot ask LK to pay the entire money. They will have to ask for uniform calls. That means 30 rupees to every shareholder. Let's move on to the next question, part B. So in part B, there is a company, Mrs. Right Trading Limited. Now this company has a current financial year of 24-25. Now in this company, Mr. J is the CFO and he has retired. So a new CFO, Mr. C, is appointed. Now Mr. C verifies the financial statements of the company and he thinks that the board of directors should revise the financial statements for the financial year 21-22. Is this possible as per the Companies Act? Okay, so here the relevant section is section 131, which talks about voluntary revision of the financial statement. It can be done for the preceding 3 financial years if the company's financial statement do not comply with the Companies Act. Alright, so in this particular case, the current financial year is 24-25. So if we calculate the preceding 3 financial years, they will start from 21-22. So for the financial year 21-22, yes, the financial statements can be voluntarily revised under 131. Let's move on. Next question. So in the next question, we have got a firm, Mrs. DEF. It is conducting the audit of a company for 9 years. Now because of rotation, this company has to retire. A new firm, Mrs. XYZ, is to be appointed as the auditor for this company. Now there is a common partner. One of the partners, Mr. F, who is the certifying person, who is in charge of certification of financial statement, he has joined Mrs. XYZ. As per the Companies Act, whether the appointment of XYZ is valid. So there are 2 firms. One firm is retiring, the other firm has to be appointed as the auditor, but both of them have got common partner. So here the relevant section is section 139, which talks about rotation of auditors, and accordingly, see, this new firm will also be disqualified. Rotation for 5 years, there has to be a cooling period. This cooling period will apply not only on the previous firm, that is DEF, but on any other firm which has got common partners. So both of these firms are going to be disqualified to be appointed as the auditor. Moving on, question 2, part A. We have got a private company, Stuti Ceramic Private Limited. This company wants to expand and it needs certain funds, let's say 500 lakh rupees. But this company does not want to convert itself into a public company. Okay, it does not want to list its shares. The company is also reluctant to go to banks and financial institutions. However, this company is considering to issue right shares to existing shareholders for 100 lakh rupees. So with reference to the Companies Act, advise this company whether the company can raise funds through private placement issue. Alright. So you have to basically give the provisions relating to private placement. Can this company go for private placement? If so, then is there any limit of fresh offer and time limit for allotment? So the time limit for allotment, we know that is 60 days. For private placement, we have to refer to section number 42, which talks about private placement. It says that in one financial year maximum, private placement can be done to 200 individuals. It does not include QIBs or ESOP. Alright. So you will simply have to give the provisions of private placement here. Alright. Let's move on. Part B. So we have got Dolls Toys Limited. It is having a net worth of 310 crores, paid up share capital of 200 crores, free reserves and security premium of 110 crores and turnover of 300 crores. Now this company wants to issue deposits to the public other than members. As per the Companies Act, you have to check whether this company can accept deposits from the public. So this company is a public company having this much net worth and this much turnover. So here we are talking about acceptance of deposits chapter. Relevant section is section number 76, which says that eligible company can issue deposits to the public. Now what is an eligible company? Eligible company is a company having net worth of 100 crores or more or turnover of 500 crores or more. One of the condition has to be satisfied. So turnover is 300 crores, doesn't satisfy the limit, but net worth is 310 crores, which is more than 100. So one criteria is satisfied. This company is an eligible company. It can issue deposits to the public. Moving on. It is further mentioned that Dolls Toy Limited is in urgent need of fund as one of the contract is on the verge of completion and it's promising to repay deposits within a period of 4 months. Is this company eligible to accept deposits for 4 months? Now in acceptance of deposits chapter, we have read the rules relating to acceptance of deposits chapter. Rule 3 talks about tenure for which the deposits can be accepted. It can be accepted from 6 months to 36 months. However, short-term deposits can be accepted up to 3 months maximum. Okay. So 3 months deposits can be accepted provided it is not more than 10% of the paid up share capital, free reserves and security premium. So here this company is in urgent need. It wants to raise funds by issue of deposits with a tenure of 4 months. Is it allowed? Yes, it is allowed, but up to 10% only, up to 10% of paid up share capital, free reserves and security premium. Let's move on. Next question is from General Clause Act. Whenever a new law is enacted by the Government of India, what is the date on which it comes into force? It is very easy. Section 5 talks about coming in effect of any enactment. So whatever date is mentioned in the official gazette, that is the date when the act comes into picture. If the date is not issued, then in that case the date on which the president gives the assent, that is the date when the act comes into effect. Next, whenever a new law is enacted to replace the existing law, it repeals the old enactment. Describe the points which shall not have any effect of repeal of the old enactment. So here we are talking about section number 6 of the General Clause Act, which talks about effect of repeal. There are certain points mentioned in it. So under the previous act, if there was any liability created, rights given, then they will not be changed. If there is any proceeding going on under the previous act, they will not be changed. So whatever has happened in the previous enactment will not be affected. You will have to write all those points here. Alright, let's move on. So question 3 part A. The paid up share capital of Star Furnishing Limited is 1 crores, which is 10 lakh shares of 10 rupees each. Out of this, Home Decor Limited is holding 6 lakh equity shares. So Home Decor Limited is holding 60% shares of Star Furnishing Limited. So it becomes what? It becomes a holding company. Okay, and remaining 4 lakh shares are held by others. Simultaneously, Star Fishing, which is the subsidiary, is holding 7% equity shares of Home Decor, out of which 2% are held as legal representative of a deceased person. On the basis of the given information, examine the following. Can Star Fishing Limited make further investment in this company? Can this company exercise voting rights? So, this is very simple and a very repetitive question. The relevant section is section 19, which says that subsidiary company cannot hold the shares of holding company. So, Home Decor is holding company, Star Furnishing is subsidiary company. Subsidiary company is having 7% equity shares in holding company, 2% out of which is held by a legal as a legal representative. Alright. So, can this subsidiary company have more shares in the holding company? The answer is no. And second thing is, can it exercise voting rights? So, it can exercise voting rights with respect to 2% equity shares that are held as legal representative. Okay, so if shares are held as legal representative or trustee, then voting rights are allowed. On any other shares, the voting rights are not allowed. So, on 5% shares, voting rights will not be allowed. Moving on to the next question, part B. We have a company, Naveen Tools Limited. Now, this company has mortgaged its land and building. The date of mortgage is 1st March 23 to Goodwill Bank and availed a credit limit of 200 lakh. But this company has not received the credit limit. The credit limit is received in August. So, in this whole passage, you can read the passage. The main question that is coming out is that what is the date from which the registration of charge timeline will get triggered. Okay, so this company has not registered the charge. This company has to register the charge. Now, that timeline, when we are going to start calculating the timeline from the date of creation of charge, or that is on 1st of March, or from the date on which, that is in August, when the loan facility is availed by the company. So, that is also your first question. The first question says, when the trigger point for registration of charge shall arise, at the time when the credit limit is sanctioned by the bank or at the time of availing the credit limit. So, here you will have to refer to section number 77, which talks about charge registration, that you will have to specify the timeline. The charge has to be registered within 30 days. There is going to be an extension period also allowed, but this registration has to be done from the date of creation of charge within 30 days. Alright. The second question is, what is the consequence of non-registration of charge? So, that is mentioned in our section number 86, which talks about punishment for not following the provisions of registration of charge. Okay. So, in case of willful default, section 447 will be attracted. Other than that, company will be penalized by 5 lakh rupees, an officer up to 50,000 rupees. Let's move on to the next question. Next question is from interpretation of statutes. Explain the rule which suggests plain words require no explanation and technical words have to be understood in technical sense. So, this is simple. You will have to explain the rule of literal construction. Okay. So, the words have to be read as it is. If it is technical word, for example, the word practice, then it has to be understood in context of the technical jargon. Okay. So, for example, practice word has to be used as if a person is practicing in court. Okay. So, technical words have to be used in context of that subject. Okay, question number 4, part A. So, we have got XYZ Limited, which is a company having paid up share capital of 75 crore rupees. It was performing well in recent years, but it suffered some losses in the first and second quarter of the financial year 23-24. In order to sustain the damages, Board of Directors declared interim dividend of 30% on the paid up share capital on 4th of October 23. Following our additional information for past 7 years. Explain as per the Companies Act if 30% interim dividend can be paid. Okay. So, now relevant section is 123. It says that if interim dividend has to be paid, we have to check if the company is in losses till the last quarter. If it is in losses till the last quarter, then the dividend should not be more than the average of the preceding 3 years. Okay, so here the company is in losses for the last 2 quarters. Therefore, we are going to take the average of last 3 years dividend. It will come to 20%. So, maximum dividend, interim dividend that this company can pay is 20%. Now, let's look at part C. Okay, this is from interpretation of statute. First question asks, what is the purpose of including definitions of certain words in a statute? So, definitions, it is an internal aid for construction. Definitions are basically to explain certain words in context of the act, the way they have to be understood in the enactment. Further, they help you in reducing the size of the act, so that the words don't have to be repeated again and again, they don't have to be explained again and again. So, therefore, definitions are used. Definitions can be inclusive, exclusive, so that you will have to explain. Second part says, what is the meaning of the word mean? Include, means and includes, to apply and to include. Okay, so first you have to explain what is an inclusive definition, what is an exclusive definition. Inclusive definition means a definition which is broad, it can include more items than what are mentioned there, right? So, when we say, and what is an exhaustive definition? Exhaustive definition means a definition which has limited capacity, it cannot include any more items. Okay, so when we use the word mean, it means the definition is exhaustive. When we say include, the definition is inclusive, it can add more items. Mean and include means the definition is exhaustive, it is limited, it cannot add more items. To apply and to include means it is an inclusive definition. Alright. Question 5, part A. Sanjana joins a company named Designer Clothes Limited as an independent director. Now, this Sanjana is the director of this company. She wants to inspect the books of accounts of this company, but for some reason she is not available in town. So, she wants to authorize her friend Avantika, who is a chartered accountant, to inspect the books of accounts. Is this allowed? Section number 128, it is not allowed. The director can himself or herself look at the books of accounts. They cannot authorize someone to look at the books. Let's move on. We are looking at question number C. Now, question number C is from General Clause Act. Alright, so the first part says, in the contract of sale, Mr. A fraudulently sold certain goods to Mr. B. Now, A is liable for fraudulent activity under the Contract Act and also under the Sale of Goods Act. State as per General Clause Act whether this offence is punishable under both the enactments. So, this is a very common question. Section number 26 of the General Clause Act. Now, if an offence is punishable under two enactments, then the person cannot be punished twice for the same offence. Question 2. Mr. P has bought a car from Mr. G, who is a friend. Mr. P did not check the car when whether the purchase made could be said to have been in good faith. Explain with reference to the General Clause Act. Okay, so here you will have to explain the meaning of good faith as per General Clause Act. Okay, so this definition is covered in section 3 of the General Clause Act. Good faith means an act which is done honestly, whether negligently or not. So, that you will have to explain. Now, question number 6, part A. We have a company, Silk Textile Limited. This company is incorporated in India. It has two subsidiaries, Print Limited, in which 80% shares are held by Silk Textile Limited, and Switch Limited, which is a wholly owned subsidiary. Now, both of these subsidiaries are incorporated outside India. Now, Board of Directors of Silk Limited intend to call an EGM of Silk Textile Limited. During the same time, Board of Directors of Print Limited also want to call an EGM on urgent basis in Dubai. The chairman, with the consent of the board, wanted to hold an EGM of Silk Textile Limited at Dubai so that he can attend the EGM. But the company secretary says this should not happen outside India. Now, you have to explain these two things. Okay, so what is happening? There are three companies. One is Silk Textile, which is the holding company. Then we have Print Limited, which is a subsidiary company. 80% shares are held by the holding. Switch Limited, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Silk. Now, the subsidiaries, both of these are incorporated outside India. Okay, but Silk Textile Limited is a public company. Now, what is a public company definition? It is covered in section 2, clause 71. It says public company includes the subsidiaries of a public company also. So we can say in a way Print Limited and Stitch Limited will also be considered public company for the purpose of the Companies Act, right? So that's the first part. So all these three companies will have to follow the Companies Act, right? Now what does the Companies Act talk about? EGMs. Okay, extraordinary general meetings have to be held in India except for a wholly owned subsidiary of a company incorporated outside India. Okay, other than that, for all the companies, the EGM has to be held in India. Okay, so accordingly, can we answer these two questions? See, for the holding company Silk Textile Limited, it is already incorporated in India. Its EGM cannot be held in Dubai. Okay, and what about Print Limited? Print Limited is also a subsidiary. So here again, Print Limited also will have to have its EGM held in India. Now A part has an alternative also. There is an option. You can choose the second option also if you like. Let's read the optional question here. Creative Textile Limited, it is an unlisted public company. The company's paid up share capital is 50 lakh consisting of 5 lakh shares having face value 10 rupees each. So this company has 5 lakh shares. Now Raman is a person having 50,000 shares of the company. That means 10% shares are held by him. He is not happy with one of the directors and he wants to replace or remove the person from directorship. He wants to change one of the directors. But the AGM has already happened. We know director is appointed or removed in the AGM. AGM has already happened. Now this person, he wants to call an EGM. Can he call an EGM? Can he request an EGM? That is your first question. Can Raman, an individual, make requisition to the company for calling EGM? Relevant section is section 100, which says that request can be made to the company to hold the EGM if the person or group of shareholders they hold at least 10% of the paid up share capital. Here this person already holds 10%, which is 50,000 shares. He can make that request. Second question is, if the company does not call the EGM, then what is Raman's option? So if EGM is not called within 3 months of making this requisition, then Raman, who is the requisitionist, he can himself call the EGM as per section 100. Alright, let's move on. So the next question is about foreign company. We have Beauty Cosmetics, a company which is incorporated in Korea and has a branch office in Chennai. It conducts the business in India. Okay, so is this a foreign company? Is this a company incorporated outside India? Well, yes. See, the company has to be incorporated outside India and it has to have place of business in India, electronically or through agent, etc. Right, so here this company is incorporated in Korea and has place of business in India. Therefore, this company is a foreign company. Now, the structure of paid up share capital is as follows. The company does not have any preference shares. It has equity shares which are held by one Indian citizen having 10% of it, another Indian citizen having 20% of it, and another Indian company having 20%. So basically 50% of this company's paid up share capital is held by Indian citizens as well as Indian companies. Now you have to answer the following question. First, whether this company will be deemed foreign company. This we have answered, yes. Second, for the business carried out in India, will it be required to comply with the provisions of the Companies Act? Okay, so here we know the relevant section is section 379, which says that if 50% or more of the paid up share capital of this foreign company is held by Indian citizens or Indian company or body corporate or a combination of these two, then the company will have to comply with the Companies Act. Alright, chapter 22 will have to be complied with, and any other applicable provisions from the Companies Act, this company will have to comply. So that was the discussion about the company law paper that came in your September 24 CA Inter examination. Hope you have understood everything. If you have doubts, do write in the comments and make sure you do subscribe the channel. Okay, bye-bye.